Fantastic. Hi, everybody. Sorry it took me a while. If you notice, there's an airport in back of me, and it took about an hour to get to an airport when it normally takes me about, I don't know, 15 minutes. So my apologies for being delayed, but we really wanted to do this webinar tonight, particularly given what's going on with the Department of Education. And our view is the more information we can give to not only our members, but to everyone who's in the midst of paying back their student loans, particularly public service loan forgiveness, the better. So that's why we wanted to do this one tonight. We will be doing many more. But as many of you know, because you wouldn't be here, and I saw that list in terms of where you were in terms of stages of loan repayment, we have fought to actually have multiple pathways to for a better life. And, many of our members not only have gone to Reagan National Airport, many of our members go to college, to finish college, to finish grad school, have to take out significant student loans. Frankly, many people have to do it. There's about 45 million people in the United States that have had to take out student loans. And those wares, when they are yours, done through are going through the Department of Education. That has happened since the Obama administration, instead of all of the other problems people have had. The Obama administration moved them all to the Department of Education. Public service loan forgiveness being one of them, but there were many others. So we now get to 20, let's first say 2020, and now 2024, 2025. Biden administration, 2020, with us and Mike and others, we try to clean up a lot of these issues. Now, some of it, we tried to get things delayed because of COVID for a long time, because of all the issues obviously surrounding COVID. But we also tried to clean up income-driven repayment. We tried to make sure that public service loan forgiveness actually worked. We tried to also make sure that if somebody went to drunk trade school and couldn't get a real degree, that they wouldn't have to pay their student loan. We tried to do all these things, as did the Biden administration. And a lot of this stuff got cleaned up. The one thing that the Biden administration couldn't get done, that they tried to get done, was to get the $10,000 kind of forgiveness for everyone. And when that got struck down by the Supreme Court, what then happened was they created SAFE, which was essentially a way of trying to reduce income-driven repayment to such a low amount that people could really be able to pay their loans and have their lives. That's separate and apart from public service loan forgiveness, although some of it was connected. What then happened? Trump administration comes in, basically says, we're rejecting SAFE, it's gone. They adopted what the courts had done already and what the right wing had done to try to stop SAFE. But then they did worse. Then they said, we're going to adopt some income repayment plans, but they're going to be significantly higher than what had happened before. And then they've said that we don't really know. They don't really know what they're going to do in terms of public service loan forgiveness. They don't really know if every single group of people who are now in it are still going to stay in it. And then they took all this stuff off of the website. Sorry, I may not be getting my timing right. So no one had any information about anything. And then what they did is say, and by the way, even though you have no information about anything, and even though Mohila is not answering your phone calls or any of this other stuff, we're going to make you start paying back the loans. And if you don't pay back the loans, then we're putting you into collection cases. So that's essentially what has happened in the last 110 days. So what we've done is we've done what we did before. We sued them. We sued them first to put the stuff back on the website, which they have now done. And then with other advocacy groups we're gonna, Mike's gonna go through a lot of these things in more detail. We are trying to make sure that the service loan forgiveness really works and that it doesn't get conditioned in the way in which they're trying. So that's why we wanted to have this call, to basically say to all of you, we're on it. I'm not sure that we'll be able to unwind all the chaos and confusion that they're doing. It's not like the other administrations were chaotic either on this issue, but we're going to do everything we can to actually make the income-driven repayment plans ones that are affordable and useful. Two, to make sure public service loan forgiveness works in the way it is intended by statute law right now, and that the Trump administration can't put an ideological lens on it, and that we're going to try and hold Mohila accountable to do what they're supposed to do in terms of all of you. So that's what we're trying to do. We're also fighting the cuts that they're trying to do. Essentially, they're taking the $330 billion that is used in the student infrastructure for Pell Grant, for income-driven repayment, for all of this other student loan forgiveness functions that Biden administration and the Obama administration, the first Trump administration and the Bush administration, all of them put in, and they're basically taking him hatchet job. So that's what we're trying to do. And then yesterday, because we are now seeing that basically the Department of Ed is giving Mohila a free pass, Mike and I called for an investigation into potential mismanagement and corruption. And when I say Mike, I'm talking about the Mike Cruz, who is the head of the Student Borrower Protection Center, and he has been at Student Borrower Protection Center, has been our ally and our partner in all of this. But so yesterday, we basically called for an investigation into potential mismanagement and corruption at the Department of Ed, because we are, just like the attorney generals, we are trying to hold Mohila accountable and to stop them from forcing working people into financial hardship. And we are watching the Trump administration basically giving them carte blanche to do all of this. So, yes, the fox is now guarding the hen house, but we are doing everything in our power to fight that. And the first thing was to make sure you knew all the things that were going on and what we're trying to do to fight it. So, Mike, now I'm going to turn it over to you to actually correct all the things I didn't say correctly. Mike Pierce.
Thank you so much, Randi, and thank you for the kind words and for your partnership on all these issues and for your leadership over the course of more than a decade now that we've been doing this work together to try to make these broken public programs actually work for working people. I'm going to try to offer a little bit more context about a few of the things that Randi said. I'm also going to go a little bit deeper on income-driven repayment, debt collection, some of the recent changes to the student loan system. But first, I just wanted to start with a very brief introduction. So I'm, as Randi mentioned, I'm Mike Pierce. I'm the executive director of the Student Borrower Protection Center. We have the incredible fortune of being AFT's lawyers in these cases against Mohila and against Linda McMahon to try to make the student loan system keep its promises. We've been in this fight for a long time together, going back to AFT's lawsuit against Navient and the incredible work that we've done to try to make the public service loan forgiveness program actually work. And as Randi mentioned, more than 1 million public service workers are now debt-free because President Biden listened to AFT and listened to the other unions who represent public service workers and made trying to make PSLF actually work for people a priority. And despite the huge setback at the Supreme Court and the fact that tens of millions of people are stuck in debt and shouldn't be, public service workers have it a little better this time than when President Trump first came into office in 2017, when 99 out of every 100 student loan borrowers who were applying for debt relief were being rejected. So again, that's just a tiny silver lining in a very dark cloud here. The state of the student loan system is bad, and we are working hard to try to make change where we can, and are very proud to be in this fight with AFT. So to get started here, I want to just give a little bit of an overview of where we are with student debt. Americans owe more than $1.7 trillion in student loans. That's more than all the outstanding car loans. That's more than all the outstanding credit card debt. It's more than all the outstanding medical debt. It's a huge market, a huge problem, and I don't need to tell the folks on this call, right? It's a huge problem for families that have these student loans. We have done a lot of work together to try to make the student loan system work better, but it doesn't work well. It's never worked well. And anybody that's ever tried to get a straight answer out of Mohila knows that the companies that are paid billions of dollars by the federal government to try to make these things work are often cutting corners, misleading borrowers, just generally making an already complicated and broken system much worse. So I wanted to spend just a minute talking about where we are now, where we're going, and your rights under the law. So under the Biden administration, as Randi mentioned, we shut the whole student loan system down at the start of the pandemic. And that means that for tens of millions of people who have loans owned by the federal government, they were not charged interest, they were not forced to make payments, and importantly, I'll talk more about this, they were not subject to forced debt collection. The pause on debt collection actually lasted 5.5 years, thanks to our shared advocacy. We kept the student loan debt collection system off right up until Donald Trump came back into office. There are also some policy reforms that worked, some policy reforms that didn't. I'm going to walk through all of that in just a second. It's all just to say that where that leaves us now is the student loan system, in all of its mess and predation, is finally coming back to life. And what that means is that people are going to have to figure out how to make heads or tails of a very complicated system. So we are now starting to see what is one of the largest negative credit events in the history of the credit reporting system. Millions of people's credit are being damaged in real time right now for the first time since the pandemic. People's credit reports have been protected by the Biden administration. They were protected by the Trump administration in the last months of the Trump administration. And now we're starting to see people's credit damaged. We expect that by the end of this month, more than just shy of 6 million people will have had their credit damaged by the Trump administration as they turn the student loan system back on. Another 2 million people are in the pipeline. I think in total, we're estimating that somewhere between 8 and 10 million people will have their credit damaged by the end of the year. That's enormous, and that's not just debt collection. These are people that are getting bills, were current on their student loans, or maybe just weren't making heads or tails of what's going on in the student loan system and won't discover that things are bad that are happening to them until they get an alert from their FICO monitor or their credit reporting company or their credit card that says suddenly their credit's been damaged. So we're watching this closely. We're looking at our legal tools to try to be able to stop this, but right now this is happening, and it's happening in real time. We know that in the background of all of this, as Randi mentioned, there are a lot of people that thought they were going to have their debts canceled. People who got letters from the Biden administration saying, congratulations, you are eligible for $10,000 or $20,000 of debt relief. People who should be debt-free by right. But the right-wing Supreme Court and right-wing state attorneys general ran to court back in 2022, got the Supreme Court to strike this down in 2023, and we have just been living through the aftermath of that lawless and abusive decision by the Supreme Court. On the heels of that, President Biden announced that they were going to make payments more affordable. That also was blocked by right-wing judges. And so today we find fewer options available, more chaos, and then more negative consequences than borrowers have faced in 5 years. The headline that you may have seen this week, which is distinct from all of the bad headlines about the student loan system for the past few months, is that this week, this past Monday, the government started taking people's money by force. When I say that, I mean seizing people's Social Security payments, seizing people's tax refunds, and then announcing that people are going to start having their wages garnished later this summer. 5.5 million people are in the crosshairs right now of the government's debt collection scheme. The president and Education Secretary Linda McMahon have been gleeful in threatening student loan borrowers, talking about how it is that student loan borrowers are freeloaders, talking about how the student loan system must get repaid. This is all a choice. These are policy choices. This is because Donald Trump, the president, is breaking the promises that Donald Trump, the candidate, made to lower costs for working people, and instead is playing politics with student loan borrowers' lives. There are things that you can do to protect yourself. I'm going to talk more about that in just a second, but I just want to note one more time that if you get a letter saying the government's going to take your money by force, the best thing that you can do is ask questions. And if something doesn't seem right, I'll talk more about how this works in a minute. You can open a case with your member of Congress and they can be your advocate. It doesn't matter where you live. Every member of Congress, Democrat or Republican, has a casework operation and is there to help you be your advocate with the federal government when there's a broken public program. And there is no more broken public program in the student loan system. I'm going to say that a couple times during this presentation. Normally, we would tell you to go to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or go to the Department of Education or go to your state attorney general. But right now, the best thing you could do is bring your case to a member of Congress. For everybody who's not facing forced collection, so you're not getting one of those terrifying, threatening letters that says the government's going to seize your tax refund or seize your wages. You're just worried about how you're going to pay your bill. You're getting a bill every month from a company like Mohila. You may be working towards public service loan forgiveness. You may have your payments paused because you were enrolled in SAVE and that was held up in court. There are millions of people, especially public service workers, including teachers and healthcare workers and many other AFT members, who can't afford a standard monthly payment. They can't afford to make 10 years of payments and pay off their loans completely, or they just want to make progress towards PSLF. Right now, it's hard to make heads or tails of this. Randi mentioned we had to sue on behalf of AFT. We had to sue Linda McMahon to get her to even put the application to apply for payment relief up on the website. Fortunately, under threat of AFT's litigation, they did do that. And so borrowers can enroll in income-driven repayment, which is the option to make payments based on your income. It's the engine that drives the public service loan forgiveness program. And it's back online, and it's thanks to AFT. Unfortunately, these applications are getting put into a backlog, but we're here for borrowers every day who've been waiting months to actually have those processed. But while they're being processed, you don't have to make a monthly payment. You will not have your credit damaged. You will not ultimately cascade into default and have your wages seized, your Social Security seized. So it's not everything. It's certainly not enough. It's certainly not what you deserve, but it's better than it was before we filed that lawsuit. It's better than it was back in February. We are still watching borrowers be attacked all over the place. There are lawsuits that were filed by Republican state attorneys general blocking access to affordable payments. That continues to cascade through people's lives, especially the public service workers, the 8 million borrowers, including public service workers, who are being told to just sit tight and it will all work out in the end. We don't believe that. We are fighting every day to make sure that you do have your rights here. But right now, millions of people are just in limbo, waiting to see what the Trump administration does. We are also watching in Congress as Republicans in the House are moving a piece of legislation that has the potential to raise monthly payments for everybody. A single family of 4 with student debt could end up paying $5,000 a year more. So again, that's not a thing to freak out over today. Congress still has to pass it, but it's something that we are watching. It's something that we are fighting against, and just important to know who is on your side. And if you're looking for opportunities for political action, there's no place better to go than AFT. They are in Congress every day fighting to make sure that the worst of this doesn't happen. And then importantly, the administration is threatening to rewrite the rules for both the public service loan forgiveness program and for income-driven repayment. And as Randi mentioned at the top, Donald Trump signed an executive order threatening to revoke access to public service loan forgiveness for people that work in fields that he doesn't approve of. People that are providing services to undocumented people, people that are providing services to trans people, even potentially people working for state and local governments that have laws on the books that advance projects that build a more just and inclusive society, but that Donald Trump doesn't agree with. So we are watching closely. None of this has happened yet. These are threats. We are prepared to sue if they ever do come to fruition. But just know that you're going to see headlines. They're going to be scary, but they're not going to affect you until far into the future, and we'll have fought at every step of the way. Right now, what you need to worry about, though, is making sure that you take action to protect yourself from credit damage, and you take action to get yourself out of defaults if you're getting threatened for debt collection. Those are the 2 most important things you can do right now. I am going to talk a little bit more now about how to protect yourself and how to fight back, and then I am going to hand this off. So I just want to say Thanks once again to Randi and to AFT for letting us represent you in court in our ongoing fight against Mohila, for deflecting people's calls, for steering them away from help and into hours-long wait times and dead ends and runarounds. And I mentioned again, we are suing Linda McMahon to make sure that every borrower who has a right to income-driven repayment is able to invoke that right. And we are also working to unwind the legacy of right-wing lawfare that has blocked payment relief and debt relief. We are watching Congress to try to make sure that these awful measures that will make costs go up don't move through. And we are also prepared to litigate if the Education Department moves forward in blocking access to PSLF for anybody. We also just wanted to end here. I wanted to end here one more time by a plug for the Student Borrower Protection Center's Congressional Casework Tool. So I mentioned there used to be ways to be able to get help. You could reach out to the Education Department for help if something doesn't seem right. You could reach out to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau if something doesn't seem right. The Trump administration has declared war on the federal government, is mass firing Education Department officials, has mass fired consumer protection officials all across the government. Those programs, those protections are not working as well as they used to. But members of Congress are there to help. Whether or not your representative is a Democrat or Republican, whether or not your senator is a Democrat or Republican, they all do congressional casework. They are all there to be able to help you. And the best thing you can do if you want to fight back against awful right-wing legislation is help your member of Congress understand that the system is broken and that you need to pay less, not more. And one of the ways you can do that is by opening a case with your elected official. You can learn more about how to do that going through our step-by-step guide on how to open a case with your member of Congress. That's at protectborrowers.org/casework tool. So with that, I am happy to end, and I'm happy to hand this back over. And I just wanted to say thank you one more time for the chance to present today.
Thank you, Mike. Can everybody hear me? Because I just put my buds in. Can people hear me?
Yep, you sound great.
Okay, fantastic. Good. So what I want to do is Mike talked a lot. By the way, we have some questions in the chat. We will follow up directly with some of these questions. We're not going to be able to reply to personal information right now in terms of the chat, but if you give us enough that we can follow up here, then we will follow up with you directly. But also remember, we have debt clinics. So you can go to a debt clinic, email, we have these debt clinics once a week. You can email debtclinic@aft.org to get some more information as well. But we understand this is an all-out war here, and the most important thing we can do is make sure not only that you know what we're doing, but how we can help in terms of individual cases. So that's one thing that we're doing. But you also saw, that's another thing that we're doing. Alex Palumbo has just put in how you can register for debt clinics, and that's in the chat right now. What we're also doing is, as Mike said, even though we don't believe that they are going to change their tune, but they have on certain things, and when we push and prod and press. And so I mentioned our income-driven repayment lawsuit against the Department of Ed, as did Mike. One of the people who has been really adversely affected and has actually not only told her story in our IDR lawsuit, but came to Washington last week to testify at the Department of Ed hearing about the future of PSLF, is Rachel DeBrule, who is a social studies teacher at a tech high school in Connecticut. And, she should have already, Rachel, I hope you don't mind me telling your story. It gets me red hot mad every time I see it. Rachel should have already been receiving PSLF, but because of this kind of never land, because of the forbearance issues, the transition to the Trump administration, she is really like so many others in this limbo and is speaking out on behalf of the millions of borrowers who are stuck in this maze as we're trying to get debt forgiveness. Now, we've gotten millions of people debt forgiveness. I think we are at on PSLF over 5 million people we've gotten debt forgiveness. But we are not going to stop until we get everybody who needs debt forgiveness, particularly PSLF debt forgiveness, and until we make sure that everybody gets the appropriate income driven repayment plan. We know people have to pay their debts, but this nonsense of Mohila putting people into forbearance and creating this unbelievable maze, which is what we saw in the first Trump administration. Now it's just the same plus more. So I want to turn it over to Rachel to talk about your story and what you and we are trying to do.
Thank you so much, Randi, for having me here today to share my PSLF and IDR journey, roller coaster. As she mentioned, my name is Rachel DeBrule. I teach at a technical high school in Connecticut. I've been a teacher now for well over 10 years. And I still have $88,000 of federal student loan debt. My PSLF journey started before I was even a teacher. I decided to actually become a teacher because I had a passion for the classroom and didn't know if I could afford it. And it's because of PSLF that I went back to school to become a teacher. I took that leap of faith to serve my community. And I went to school, got a job, started repaying my loans, and I did everything I was supposed to do. Every year I did my employment verification, my PSLF employment verification. I did my IDR income paperwork every year for about 10 years. My husband also worked in public service, and I did it for him. He was about 6 payments ahead of me. So fast forward to 2024, and late spring in 2024, my husband's debt was forgiven. And it felt like a victory. Oh my gosh, this is possible. We're within inches of the finish line. Mine, $78,000 of mine should be done at the end of 2024. We're almost there. And then about a month, 6 weeks later, the SAVE forbearance nightmare in July of 2024 happened. And within days of the forbearance going into place, I contacted Mohila and I said, I want out of this, and I don't want to be in this. I want out of it. And does this time count for my PSLF? Mohila, being Mohila, told me, yes, don't worry, it does count toward your PSLF. So just to be safe, I kept paying, even though in the forbearance we didn't have to. I kept paying every month. And it wasn't until mid to late fall that I finally definitively found out that all of that time would not count toward my PSLF. And it's shortly after that I just started taking as much action as I possibly could. I was filling out PSLF applications all the time, IDR applications, buyback applications, anything that I could possibly do. I contacted my senator. I was doing everything I could. And I attended an AFT student debt clinic. And through them, I got wonderful information. And I filled out a form because AFT wanted to know our stories. So I filled out a form and I submitted it. In the meantime, after that is when I found out that IDR and PSLF were truly in danger. And I remember there was one day that I literally was bawling my eyes out because I thought, what am I going to do if I can't have an income-driven repayment? What am I going to do if PSLF goes away? My family cannot afford that. And it was actually that afternoon that I got a call from AFT saying, do you want to, get in this fight? And I think the thing I really want to talk about for a second is how alone you can feel in this and how isolated it can be and how there's a shame that comes along with our debt, even though there should be none. And it was so nice to know that AFT was taking this new student loan battle on. And I decided on that day that I wasn't going to cry anymore about these loans. And I was going to turn those tears into action. And I would do anything humanly possible to help AFT in this fight. And because individually, we don't have the resources to take the federal government on. But collectively, we really are union strong, and we can do this. And it's not just a promise, it's not just a right, it's what's legally ours to have. And I'm just so glad that Randi and Mike and AFT is stepping forward and leaning into this. And if there's just the one thing I want to emphasize is you are not alone. Well, first off, record everything, have documentation for everything. Second, you are not alone. We are in this together. If you feel isolated, we've all been there, but we are not alone. We are in this together. And then just finally, turn your tears into action. Now is the time to stand up, have a voice, get involved, because individually, who will listen, but together, they will listen, and we will win this fight. So I just want to thank Randi again for having me here today. And we got this. We're going to get there.
Thank you, Rachel. And I can't thank you enough for actually speaking up and for being out there. The more people speak up, look, we are a union. Everyone who's a member of ours, you have a right of association under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. And that right of association is key in terms of our rights. And we are going to be out there day in and day out on this. But the stories are really important because the stories allow us to go to court. And I see Evelyn Selleck in the attendee chat as well. We need the stories because when we go to court, we need judges to actually see what we're doing. And the other point that Mike made earlier about going to your congressional, your congressperson and doing that kind of inquiry and fight back as well is really, really important. But Rachel, you are right. We are going to win this. I feel much more confident right now than I did a month or two ago, because I can see when people take the street, when we go to court, the courts have stopped Trump 200 times. We have like 10 or 11 of those lawsuits, but we need to be in the courts, the court of public opinion. And that's the way we'll change Congress. And ultimately that's the way we'll change the presidency. But it takes people who have the courage to do this. And I really, 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 we all really appreciate you and your courage. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. And then
Thank you so much.
The last person I want to introduce is the president of AFT Missouri. And when I think about CJ, I am reminded, like Rachel, first off, as you can tell, I adore our members, but I'm reminded of the strength and of solidarity, and frankly, how together we can accomplish what can't be done alone, which is, Rachel's story too. And CJ is here tonight to share her story about student loan forgiveness. And even though she's already received PSLF and had her debt forgiven, she hasn't stopped fighting for others to get PSLF. And remember what I said, when we started this push, less than 2% of the people who we thought should be getting PSLF were getting it. We got that number during the Biden administration up to 98%. We pushed them hard to actually have a different on and off ramp before they left. And, they thought what they did was better than the way in which we suggested it. But remember, we got from 2% to 98%, and millions of people had public service loan forgiveness acknowledged, repaid, and have seen their debts extinguished because of it. CJ is one of those folks. And I just always want to go back to the kind of stories that when something seems impossible, we see that progress is possible. CJ.
Thanks, President Weingarten. It's always good to see you, and it's always good to feel your energy. I'll be really brief. I'm CJ, a paraprofessional in St. Louis with AFT Local 420, and I'm also the president of AFT Missouri. I really appreciate the opportunity to be present, to listen to what my brothers and sisters are going through at the time. I apologize if you hear background. I'm in 3 meetings at one time. But I deeply appreciate the opportunity, and I always want to make sure that I make time so that people know that it is worth the fight and why we must preserve our PSLF the way it is. So I've been in and out of school for some time, and it wasn't because I didn't want to succeed. It was just because the system kind of had failed me. So I was out of grants, and if I wanted to continue education, I had to start applying for loans. So I did that, and then, you know, our colleges, our programs, they often go under supported, whereas it's supporting educators and paraprofessionals. So the lack of stability and encouragement, it really affects us all, and it took a toll on me. A single parent with a son that's almost getting ready to go to college. Actually, he goes to college this August, September. So I'll be doing this all over again, and I'm still in college. So everything is still adding up at the present moment. So when I heard about PSLF, you all, to be honest, I was like, this is not true. I mean, it's just something probably for certified teachers. I was like, I'm not introducing this to the members until I walk through it and go through it. And I'm always like that. I'm always leery on what I produce to our members so that I can make sure that it works, and then I know how to help them with the process. When I say the turnaround was so quick, it was so quick. And that $12,000, over $12,000, let me say, was everything. And it directly supported my journey to, at that time, I was in an automotive degree. So it took that off and took some of my education schooling off. So that, like I said, that changed everything. I was so moved by the impact of PSLF and the summer program. I asked to be trained to help other people to access this same opportunity. And since then, I've had countless people to reach out and thank me. Some people even took me to lunch with the money that they received back into their accounts. Even the president of the AFT Local 420, I want to say right the deadline of summer, he put in his application, and he was so excited that he also received that forgiveness a lot. His was in the 3 digits, by the way. So I just want everybody to know that this journey isn't just about me. It's about paving the way for those who come after us. Many of us can't afford to send our children to college based on our bank accounts. Some of our parents never had the chance to attend college themselves. I know mine didn't. And yet here we are paying thousands of dollars just to serve the world through education and community work. I didn't choose education and union work because of the pay, but I chose it because I believe in making a difference. As I know, I'm not alone. Let's keep working together to create this access, breaking down these barriers, and uplifting our generation. I just recently started getting letters from Mohila again because, like I said, they didn't forgive everything, but I still have a little bit left. Now that I'm in school, it seems like maybe it's not registering somewhere. So I'm going to have to do some more communicating. But at the same time, I'm going to keep fighting because I know we deserve it and our children deserve it. And I want to be able to be one of those ones to help make sure they get it. Thanks so much, President Weingarten. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, CJ. I appreciate you. And I think, you know, we constantly have to fight, but we have to tell the stories of success because we don't want people to give up. So thank you, CJ. And I know you're going back to all of your meetings, and thank you for everything you're doing in terms of Missouri. It is one hard job. So thank you. Thanks for everything. I wanna go back to I just wanna make sure that we're answering a couple of these questions in terms of the chat. Someone just asked, can they join if they're not a teacher? Yes, we have an associate membership. Even if you're not, in one of our jurisdictions, you can join. In fact, my wife did, frankly, so she tells me what to do all the time. She says, I can tell you what to do because I'm a member of your union. So, but we have, there's a lot of, for example, in higher education, between AUP and us, there's a lot of people who feel under attack. So you can join the AFT. There's an associate member link that I suspect that somebody's about to put up on the board as well. It's in our AFT.org website as well. So hopefully somebody can put that up. The issues around, I'm just looking at the other, somebody's putting up how to join. I hope that's going up. I see it in my app. I hope that's going up on the, it's under AFT.org. It's called how to join. So you can get it right from there. And somebody just told me it was up. So another question is, do you work in, if you work in a pre-K, somebody asked, who should get public service loan forgiveness? So if you're in a pre-K to 12 school, whether it's public, private, or charter, if you're in an early childhood center, you're in a childhood center, a family childhood center, if you're any kind of college, all of these people should be eligible for public service loan forgiveness. Now, somebody else asked about the SAVE program. And the SAVE program is what Mike was talking about. That's the program that these conservative lawfare folk brought cases against to say that it was invalid under the law, that Biden had exceeded his authority to do it. And that was then put on a hold or pause for many of you. And many people connected, or it was SAVE and public service loan forgiveness was connected to each other. So if you were in the SAVE public service loan forgiveness program, somebody said they weren't allowed to pay their last 3 payments because it's in pause status. Well, that's the one that the EO, the new EO, has terminated. And they will, at one point or another, we believe, put people back into, or put people into other either income-driven repayment plans or into basically pay the full freight of one's loan each month. They have not decided how to do that or what to do. And we are part of being in court is we are not only monitoring that closely, but we are trying to get them to do this kind of work. Now, we'd rather have the SAVE program, but they will terminate that program. They cannot terminate public service loan forgiveness. Also, a reference to income-driven repayment is in the law, so they cannot just terminate all of those things, but they can, as Mike said, make all of this very, very chaotic. So as Rachel said, keep your paperwork right now. And as we said, we are going to try between the courts, between Congress, the complaint process, and our advocacy and our work, we are going to try to both unravel and then create pathways again for people. So I don't know, did I answer, Kelly, most of the questions?
Yes, you did. And I know that there's a lot more questions and that Sarah, Tamalia, and team will be following up with folks.
Fantastic. So the bottom line for everybody is this. We're starting right now where we thought we had ended. Remember I said 2020 and 2025. We thought by January 2021, we were in a new age, and that even though it wasn't perfect, and we had lots of issues in this arena with even the Biden administration. We certainly had created clear pathways, and lots of people were getting loan forgiveness or getting their income driven repayment plans done in a way that it was affordable. And for many, many, many years, because of COVID, there was forbearance, meaning people did not have to pay their loans. There was a moratorium. But the world has changed, and the 43 million borrowers right now that owe more than 1.6 trillion in student loans, we are going to do everything we can to actually do what Trump said he was going to do. You reduce the cost of living by making it more affordable in terms of income driven repayment. You reduce the cost of living by making sure that people can get public service loan forgiveness. You get people to work in the public sector by making sure that the promises made are promises kept. We know this economic uncertainty was not what people voted for, whether they voted for Trump, whether they voted for Harris, or whether they sat home. We know that this defunding of public education, this chaos, this making people's lives miserable was not what people wanted or expected. And we're doing our damnedest to make sure we can fight for and get to and secure a better life for people, particularly the people who every single day, nurses, firefighters, teachers, paraprofessionals, make a difference in the lives of others. So don't forget to sign up for an AFT Student Debt Clinic webinar. Check out all of our resources on aft.org/PSLF. And if you want to get more involved in the AFT, whether it's to join or to be any activist or to work with us as we take to the streets or we engage in courts or we work or you work in terms of a local, we welcome you. Thank you, everybody, and have a nice evening.